But I even have a sticker, and I'm looking around the sticker to do this, and I still didn't record. So, good morning. So for those that are watching the video afterwards, we just talked about. I created a playlist on my YouTube channel, and I'm putting the recordings there. These are unedited recordings, right? To take the time to edit, they wouldn't be there until August. So we're just going to go with what's there, and I hope that's okay. So trying to see if there's anything else in the chat. Cool. All right, so that's the first thing, right? So we do have the recordings. I'm going to try to get those up every morning. Worst case, they'll be there by the end of the weekend. The other thing I do, and I put this link in the website links, but there's this is Miro, so we're kind of playing around with Miro, just kind of using it to kind of gather some information. I'm not versed as much as I probably should be, but I wanted you guys to be aware of this. Like, so if this is a tool you have available or something that you may want to add to your tool bag, right? They do have a YouTube channel that kind of goes through, how to do voting and how the templates work. And then this very first part here is just kind of the basic navigations and things like that. So that link is in our web links reference. I put it at the very bottom of the first page there, or now on the next page. So, also good, somebody just recorded that or put that list there. So I'm going to close that one because I want you to just be aware that it's there. Other things I did, so in this link here, I put a couple I should probably get rid of the hard breaks, and then we'll do the hard breaks later, but suppliers, so I kind of reorganized the suppliers there last night. And then I also added in learning and tutorials. We're going to go over this pile this morning. The very first thing we're going to do is this pile of links. Oh my gosh, I was here on time today. Nothing else is working the way it's supposed to work. Am I sharing now? That was the question that came up. Okay, good. Yeah, so all I was doing was looking through we were looking through this document, right? So this is our shared website document. So I reorganized a couple of things, added some things. I did add this whole section down here, learning and tutorials. And that's the section that we will concentrate on today. And then, yeah, that's all. That's all I was kind of talking about on that one. So yesterday the question came up about the status of the fundamentals course. So I did reach out and I did get an answer, and this is the answer. So I created a document. And the reason I created a document, because down here in the bottom, would you be willing to collect concerns of your students? And I'm like, absolutely. So the answer from Sarah was they really don't have any more detail than what they provided in the announcement, right? So the announcement's here. You have until July 31st. That's the end of life for those courses, and then those courses will no longer be available. So next year, we have about 11 months left, or actually looks like more like 12 months, right? No, 13 months, 14 months, something like that, yearish. The introduction to IoT has been transitioned to Skills for All, and I showed you that yesterday. It went from a 20-hour course down to a 6-hour course, which I think makes a whole lot more sense for an introduction to IoT. There are some additional options under consideration, but nothing has been confirmed. So they really haven't made a decision. Now, the thing is the last sentence there, would you be willing to collect the concerns from your students so that I can share them with the product team and my leadership? And then she will help advocate for us. So what I wanted to do is I'm going to leave this document out there for you, and I'll remind you a couple times throughout the week. Right? If you're teaching an IoT fundamentals course, one of the, connecting things, big data or security, and you're going to be impacted by this end of life, then absolutely put down your concerns, ideas, thoughts, what you would like to see, whatever that may be. Please, populate this document. And then once that document is populated, then I will forward the document on, and hopefully we can enact some, change, or just maybe help direct the conversation, maybe get them to combine some of those things into a single. I kind of would like to see one pretty, one semester long course for that, right? So that document is shared in our Google Drive, right? So there's the drive there. So I just want you to be aware of it, and I'll leave it to you to add any kind of comments, right? So this may be the one, I don't know if this, we may have other chances, but this, at this point, this is our first opportunity to ask for specific things, if they're gonna, I don't know if they're gonna leave it in Unedited, if they're gonna move it to the skills for all, or there be labs, will there not be labs, will there be information, will there not be information, but maybe help direct how that course develops going forward. Okay. So I'm going to leave the web links one open because we're going to use that a lot today. On the parking lot, so web programming example, I got was dropped in there. They also a date issue with class set of pi. So if the individual who put that there is on, could you maybe further explain that? I think I understand what you're trying to say, and then this will be something that we'll put on the radar, but I want to, if we can, get an idea of what it is.
So it was me, Sarah.
Okay.
So we had, I guess it's we got the 400, the 30 of the 400. So when we first connected them, what we noticed was that we couldn't use the browser. And then we researched it and found that the date was not current. Okay. And our technician researched it and came up with, like updating NTP and changing the date manually. And so basically it doesn't retain the date, and it doesn't like search for the date when we turn them on after not using them for a week, for example.
Wow. Okay. All right, good. Like I said, I'm going to put it on the radar because I want to kind of look into it myself as well. But it sounds like they don't have batteries. That's what it sounds like to me. Like they came without the CMOS type battery, or some way to maintain that information. And I don't even know. I mean, we'd have to look at how that thing is built, if they has a battery in it or not. I've had, because I saw that and I thought, because I know in past workshops I've had on occasion like a Raspberry that just has a weird date, and you'd have to actually go into the command line and run a date command to get the date to set right. And, but yeah, so you're saying the entire classroom, it doesn't maintain if they're unplugged for a while.
Correct.
All right. Well, I know mine has been unplugged for a while, so maybe I'll plug that in this afternoon, later this morning, and see if it does the same kind of a thing. It gives me weird dates as well. Cool. Okay, that makes sense. I just wanted to kind of get a sense of what that's all about. This one we have already talked about, and then this one is an example. For web programming example, I do actually have. So there's three assignments, 3 projects that I want to work on today, based on the voting that was put into the chat yesterday. So we'll get to those in a little while, but the kind of my if we get done early, then the third project for today is setting up a LAMP stack and a WordPress. There's a project out there for doing that, so that'd be kind of a fun deal. Maybe along lines of this idea, and then from the voting from yesterday, right? So awesome. And then so that's good. Just want to make sure that we're I recap kind of what we where we're at, what we're doing. So we did. And so I did kind of clean this up a little bit. So this is looking nice, right? Again, so if you think of things as we go through the day and you want to add to this list, please do, because eventually what I want to start doing is adding in links to projects that would allow you to then hit on these topics. And you have this one single document that will help you do that. Okay. Yeah, good. All right. Are there any other lingering questions? Anything following up? We are recording. I think I've asked those other things. Please share the link to the shared resources. Sarah added those in there. So those have been there, the folder there, the documents there. Good. Yeah, 4B. Yeah, so the 400 and the 4B, right? And I think the 400, so this is because I'm curious, right? I don't think I shared with sound, did I? I am going to stop the share real fast. Actually, I'm just going to reshare with sound, hopefully.
The Pi 400. Hold on. Dissipating heat.
This is
last year I showed the Pi one of the USB 2.0 ports, which is rewired internally for the keyboard. But I have some questions. How is this thing dissipating heat? There's a whole lot of heat sink. It looks like the keyboard.
So I'm just kind of clicking through. I'm trying to see. The question has got me curious, right? So this is a teardown of this particular device. So I'm looking to see if there's, any kind of like because you can see the motherboard is back here, right? So this is basically a Raspberry, the Raspberry Pi 4 on a different configured circuit board. But I'm wondering if there is a battery or something like that that may be causing you the issue.
Board just has a flip-up connector right here, so I'll disconnect that. The keyboard is just a keyboard, so I'm going to set that aside for now. And there it is, the Pi 400's guts exposed. The heatsink is huge, and it's only thermally bonded to the system on a chip through this adhesive here, so it'll definitely be able to dissipate the heat.
I don't see any kind of, right? Unless it could be up underneath too.
I still wonder though about the USB and network controllers. Sometimes they get a little bit hot if you're pushing it really hard. It might be possible to put some other thermal bond between the system on a chip. It looks like the part number is different than the chip in the regular Pi 4 Model B. At the end it says C0T, and on the Model B I have it says B0T. This indicates a newer stepping for the BCM 2711 chip.
So those are the regular components right there of the Raspberry. That's your SD card. That's your keyboard. Unless it's up underneath. And that's interesting that it's a improved, it looks like he is taking it out.
Looking at the bottom, there's not much here besides traces that are connected to.
So there's an CMOS type of a battery going on. So not sure. That was my first thought. Like there's some kind of maintaining the power issue for that. But okay. All right. That didn't help us, but it did. Well, it did. We have an idea now, but it looks like underneath. So okay. Let's move on. I got that on the list of things that we can kind of continue to look and see if we can find if there's other issues with that or known issues with that that we can maybe track down at a later date. All right. Cool. And we're up to, all right, so 13. So we got pretty much everybody came back. That's awesome. So like, I'm always afraid on the second day. They're like, man, this guy's crazy. We're not going to do this anymore. But okay, so the date's fine. Okay. And I haven't seen that either. Like, I wonder if you just that would be weird to have a batch that all has the same kind of funky date time, real-time clock issue kind of deal. Not real-time clock, but a clock issue. Okay, I'm going to move this stuff off to the side. And okay, so the plan for today. We have a plan. The plan is I want to talk about tutorial resources first, and then I have lined up a handful of, and I have it written down. Here we go. Because so I went to let me show you what I'm talking about. So responses. So I got responses from my email a week ago, so I kind of consolidated those onto one place so I could kind of think through the process. And then yesterday we did some voting in the chat. And this is what I saw from the voting in the chat. There was 4 votes for programming, 4 votes for networking. If there was something like Python, I consider that programming. Somebody voted for VPN, DNS, DHCP. That's a networking thing. VPN is a DNS, right? 3 IoT, security, CIS, cyber. So this kind of votes of 1. So this is what I'm basing my thinking on. Is this and every day we can modify our thinking on this. This is not a set in stone. This is just how we got up to today's work. So from a networking component here, right? Because if we do IoT and some other things later, we're also going to do the Pico later, and those are all going to be programming related things, right? So I'm not ignoring the programming item. I'm looking at the networking thing, and my thought is I think it would be fun. We've done in past workshops, we have set up a Raspberry Pi, a Pi hole, which is an ad blocker, which I think is a project that students would enjoy doing. But I don't want to repeat older things. So there is another product called AdGuard, which works similar to the Raspberry Pi, but it also has, I think, DNS or is it DNSSEC out of the box? It has some encrypted DNS components out of the box. You don't have to add anything to it. So it's a different type of ad blocker. So this is a network ad blocker. So what we'll do is we'll set up the Raspberry Pi that we configured yesterday as an ad blocker. And then you can redirect your DNS on your computer through the ad blocker, and then you can actually configure filtering and all kinds of other cool things. So I think from a networking perspective, that's a really fun kind of first project. I think it's interesting for the students. I know a lot of students that'll take their Raspberry after the IoT class and they'll convert it into a Pi hole and leave it on the network to block ads. All right. And then the follow-up project to that is there's a project from a company called Initial State, which is an online, I use it in my class as an IoT dashboard type of a system. And they have a project that I haven't done. I haven't done either one of these projects. So this is it'll be a first run. They're coming from sources that I'm confident in. So I think we'll be okay. But there's a process that allows you, a project that allows you to remotely monitor a service on a Raspberry Pi. So I thought, well, from a system admin standpoint, let's set up an ad blocker, and then let's set up a dashboard that monitors whether the ad blocker is running or not. And then it will alert me if that service goes offline, right? Which is just a concept that we can use to teach those kinds of things, especially from a system admin perspective, right? You obviously want to know, hey, your Exchange server just went down, kind of thing, and this, we're going to use it for an ad blocker service, but the concept remains the same. So I thought that would be a fun combination of two things. Let's do a networking project, right, to see how we can use the Raspberry Pi to teach networking concepts, and then let's use the Raspberry Pi to teach a system admin concept, but we can combine those and work those together. So we'll do both projects on the same Raspberry Pi on the same operating system. And that way we'll be able to set up an ad blocker and then monitor the ad blocker, right? So those are the two main projects that I want to accomplish today. I want to cover the resources, like a bunch of tutorial resources, and then after we get done with those projects, we can take a look at the Cisco courses, right, as they sit today, And we can, specifically looking at the projects that are there, because a lot of the projects I think can be taken out of the, like in this idea that we're gonna have to migrate kind of onto our own course, right? We're not, like the Cisco course won't be available to us after next July. We can find either similar products or similar projects, or create projects that do, or find other projects that do that teach the same kind of idea. So I want to look at the projects in there and talk about what I like and don't like about them, so that you have an idea of what to do with those. Okay, and then if for some reason all of that gets done and we have time left, then I want to migrate back to the raspberrypi.org website, and they have a project there called Build a Lamp Web Server with WordPress. Right, so I thought it'd be really fun to show, show a student, hey, you can build a web server that sits in your house and you can, store things on it or move things to it. I've actually had students in my IoT class use that project to build a web server that allowed them to, the main project that I can remember is the student built a dash camera using their Raspberry Pi. So they built a dash, put a camera and a Raspberry Pi in a cigar box, and then they connected it to their car. And it had a couple of push buttons on it, right, just to start recording. And he had some, trigger events on accelerometer stuff, so that the cameras would turn on if there was a problem. And then what he would do when he got home is he would simply take the box, which was Velcroed to his dash, and he would take it, or a hook, was a hook and latch or whatever. Can't use the word Velcro unless it's actually Velcro. Sorry. Anyways, you would take that in the house and turn it back on, and then if it was on the local network, it would automatically upload all those videos to his web server that he built on a different Raspberry Pi, which I thought was totally cool. So yeah, so that's kind of what we're looking at doing. I'm looking at the chat. Okay, so that's the plan for today, right? So that's, I think that's going to be, I'm looking forward to it. I think it's going to be a fun day. We're going to be working on projects I haven't done, but I'm comfortable with the websites that we're going to pull the data from, and you can kind of see how that process works. Obviously, if you're going to do this in the classroom, you're going to want to test the lab before you do it in the classroom, unless you're okay with things not working right at the end. So there's always that possibility for that. So let me look. I saw over here. Programming robotics CIS can be merged into projects including machine learning with TensorFlow. Yeah, we could. And can we build a Python-based server with Danger? Yeah, you know what? So this is the Raspberry Pi Foundation webpage, right? So website here. So the one I was going to do is this one, and then the one that you want to do is this one. so I think we can get both of those done this week. Right? So a couple of different ways of doing that. So it's pretty cool. Yeah, so those are options, definitely options, right? That we can do, right? So I looked at this first one, like they have, website 1.0, 2.0, 3.0, but this one uses like Trinket, and you use it's an online thing, and you just, I don't know, like this one here is like you build it on the actual Raspberry Pi, it's on your local server, and then this one, right, is kind of just following that different method, right? Yeah. The artist does a really good job with all these things, but it's I think once you get into it, like, so here's the lab, right? So once you get into it, it's not kiddish any longer. So really it's only the header, right? And then the other thing I thought, if I'm not mistaken, I believe yeah, so these are published under the Creative Commons. So if you wanted to pull these out and pull them apart and make your own, like just following these examples, but just not in this format on this webpage, you're allowed to do that, right? So you may want to check exactly what you do. You probably have to refer that it came from the Raspberry Pi Foundation, things like that. I've seen that happen all the time. So, so yeah, so if you didn't want to use this directly, right, you could, create your own, like, so you could actually turn this into like an assignment and you could PDF the entire thing. I think you can actually print it as a PDF, but when you print as a PDF, things get lost in the mix. Because there's always like what you need, like you can do this update to, add an up-to-date install, right? So then set up the Apache server, like, so this is all, yeah, does that make sense? I agree. The kind of this kind of silly stuff here. I know, like, the one I used to use one in here called the parent detector, and it was simply, it's like an IR filter thing, an IR sensor deal. And it was always like, I hate the idea, let's just go ahead and do this project, right? So we ended up finding projects that were not, we eliminated the kiddishness of that, but I think it works, right? So if you're doing anything with middle school and high school, you can easily leave these things there. The LAMP web server, right? Again, it's the whole thing is like, that's it. Like, that's the only part that you have to really deal with as far as, but otherwise it's literally, this is all instruction that, community college and university students would be, perfectly fine going through this stuff without feeling weird. So, I've used the projects in the past, but this is the first place to kind of start looking. Oh yeah, it is. And the whole point, so you understand the Raspberry Pi, right? I mean, the story, right? And if you're not familiar with how the Raspberry Pi came around, right? So it's a Cambridge University creation, right? So Cambridge University in England. And the reason it exists is because, right, their CS program is really like a world-renowned CS program, right? And they were seeing a drop in enrollment, right? A drop in applications, drop in enrollment, and then they were also seeing a drop in the quality of student, right? So that was the impetus for why they wanted, where the Raspberry came from. The Raspberry didn't come, it wasn't like, oh, we're going to build this really cool product, right? It was like, this is our problem. How are we going to solve that? And their solution to fixing that problem was to build this inexpensive computer that was designed, right, with fun graphics, and it started with Scratch and it had Python, like this. So can we get this into the hands of elementary school students, right? And I don't know what they call elementary school in England, but elementary school students. And that's where they started, right? And they literally were like, oh, if we sell 1,000 of these, that's going to be awesome, right? And it's now, if you didn't know this, Raspberry Pi is the #1 selling computer of all times, right? Of all time. It finally eclipsed the Commodore 64 about 3 years ago. They've been around for 10 years now. They just celebrated a 10-year anniversary. But the whole point of that was to get this into the hands of elementary school students who hopefully would eventually become their new CS students. That was the start of that. And then people like me were like, oh my gosh, that's pretty cool. I can use that at this level and I can teach these things. And it brings me back to when I started computing, right? And I got, there's a lot of folks kind of my age range that are super excited about it. And then they started building projects and robots and sharing all of that stuff. And then now what you can see, you're seeing from, if you look across the tabs up there, every single one of these is a tutorial page that has tens, 20s, hundreds of tutorials. So that's kind of where they started, where how it grew. It just kind of grew. It got completely out of proportion. It's used everywhere now. It's I like it as a tool to teach computing, right? And it allows students, I like the creative component of it. I like the physical computing component, so they can be real creative with and build things. For those of you that teach robotics, I use it as a robotic platform. And in fact, I just saw today, I don't think I saved them yet. Oh, I saved them, but I don't have them for sharing today. But there are now motor controllers for the Pico, right? So the Pico using micro Python can be the brains on a motor controller, right? So Arduinos, right, do really well with motors. I like using the Raspberry Pi because on the Raspberry Pi we can start doing programming and using. We've used we've used camera modules that have specific coding for them to do object recognition and things like that. So then there's a lot of things that we can do with that. So anyways, the platform, to me, I love it. I think this is really fun. There's lots of things that we can do with it. So this tutorial page, this is Raspberry Pi, projects.raspberrypi.org. And like you said, I mean, a lot of these things they do have the fun graphics, right? But you can kind of slide through this and find a project, right, that teaches the concept that you want to teach, and then you can take that and pull it out because of Creative Commons and do all kinds of fun stuff with it. So that's the first page, and then all of these pages are stored. I've put all of these links. So if you want to get to the links, they're all right here. So I think we're going in order. No, I moved things out of order, but all of the links are here for all the pages I'm going to show you today. Okay, so that's the first place I would look. We talked about this yesterday, and these are computing courses, and these are really designed, I think, for the instructor, right? So these are courses that are really kind of designed for you, the instructor, to beef up your knowledge about these topics and be better prepared, right? So definitely worth a look. And that one's also stored in our web resources document. And then right off the bat, as soon as we set up the document, somebody posted this website. This is probably my favorite website. If you do any workshops with me, we're going to do something from this website. This is Pi My Life Up. He has a lot more things other than just Raspberry Pi. He's got some Linux stuff. I thought there's some Arduino stuff up there as well, I think. But he's got his Raspberry Pi projects, kind of beginner projects, advanced projects. We do a lot of the network tutorials. There's server projects, right? So, so you talk about, and there's operating system projects. So VPN projects, like all four of those really kind of fit into this CIS idea. If you want, there's some other IoT things that they've done. They use kind of different sensors than we normally would use. They're using circuit board or ICs here for that as well. So there's lots of cool stuff, right? If you click on all projects, just ridiculous amounts of things. Monitor a website with Python. Like this is ridiculous. Oh, here's TensorFlow. Somebody wants to do TensorFlow. TensorFlow Lite. Yeah, so as we go through this, we'll probably pick one of these projects a day for the rest of the week. The one we're going to do today can be found under Raspberry Pi under network tutorials. We're going to do the ad guard, block ads with ad guard. So we're going to do this one. It's a beginner one for networking, but tons of really good. I've always wanted to try to get this to work. I just don't have phones. Asterisk, right, which is voice over IP running on a Raspberry Pi. So so that site, this is, I highly recommend. It's totally awesome, good stuff. This one here, this is again kind of in partnership with Raspberry Pi, Isaac Computer Science. It's a website more geared towards the high school level in the UK, but there's some. Right now, they've got a lot of cool things that they're bringing to the table here, but like computer systems, they got a lot of how Boolean works, architecture, software, operating systems. They've got some cybersecurity things coming. So I would kind of keep an eye on this. Some of these things don't have anything to do with the Raspberry Pi, but they may be interesting things to add into your courses, right? So that's pretty good. I don't know. I like having the resources there, so I've shared that resource. Initial state, this is another place where we're going to pull things. I use, in my classroom, we do this one, create a system health dashboard for your Raspberry Pi. So that's one of the assignments that I do in my IoT class. And this is just to get them exposed to using like an online dashboard, which is pretty cool. The one that we're going to try this afternoon is this monitor your Pi processes and IP address, right? So we're going to try to use this one to monitor the ad guard process and the IP address, and then have it alert us either via email or text message. So that's the project we're going to work on later today. So I'm going to leave that site here. I should have left the Pi My Life upside up as well. Somebody mentioned Adafruit, right? And that was on the list, but Adafruit, I just went to their main Learn page. And Adafruit and Pi Maroni and the Pi Hut and SparkFun, they're going to provide a ton of tutorials, but the tutorials are going to have a lot to do with their products, right? But you will find inside of that, you will find a whole lot more. You'll find other tutorials that are they're not about their product. They're just about maybe using the device or how to do something else. But there's a lot of really cool things on here as well. So highly recommend that you kind of go check them out. You can probably search specifically Raspberry Pi items. I just wanted to give you the main link to their Learn page because if you're using Arduinos, this is going to be a good place to get some Arduino tutorials as well, right? So good site there. Again, all these are listed. If you have other ones and you want to add them and let me know about them, we can more than happy to show those. And then Element 14, they're also, I don't think they're on the list of people who sell these Raspberry Pis, but they do sell Raspberry Pis, and they have a bunch of stuff, STEM things. They've got some links out to massive online classes. They also have, I believe, the next slide here is the Raspberry Pi stuff, and I thought this was interesting because there's a blog post down here. Right, somebody's using a $4 MCU. So when you see $4 MCU, they're talking about the Pico. And right here, they're using TinyML to do truck APS failure detection, and then gearbox fault prediction. And I think it's interesting because I was kind of researching this one to kind of look it up, but they are using the Pico to kind of detect faults, right? So the machine learning kind of deal, but I believe they reference Kaggle, I think it is, right? And Kaggle's kind of an online, yeah, right here. So they're giving you a data set. So Kaggle is doing this. You guys heard of Kaggle? So Kaggle, they do online, they give you data sets and you have to figure out how to solve the problem, right? And then you post your solution to the problem. And I think Kaggle, if I'm not mistaken, you can win money, maybe. But it's a really cool place for, especially your more talented programming students to get out there and test their understanding, or to use, like this case, to go back in and have a pre-done set of data for you to use. But I like that one. I like the idea of this. Or having this website there, because there was a couple that were using that kind of deal and they're using the MCUs. And then as you dig into the Element 14 website, there's a bunch of other projects that people have built and posted. And in fact, they're doing a roundup of the last 10 years of projects, kind of a deal. So there's lots of really cool stuff going on there as well. So Element 14, again, all of these are stored on the our web document page. And the idea of this is I want you to see that there's really no lack of potential projects, right? there's always something you can find that you could implement in the classroom. So SparkFun is another one of those where they, hey, here's how you use all of our really cool gear that we make. And then every once in a while, they'll sneak in, how to use, or, about physical computing, or well, that's a magic mirror. Like here there's a process here to how to, they have a product to shut down things, but here's a hookup guide. I'm trying to find ones that are not based on a product. We talked about Home Assistant yesterday. So here's the tutorial on how to set up Home Assistant. which I think is totally awesome. Introduction to MQTT, that one we may want to run. I like the one that the MQTT assignment in the Cisco material in the security class it's broken because something changed. So this one is, I gotta write that one down because I need to come back to see that one. But that one I think is also cool because then, even as in an IoT class, right? Even if it's not based on security, but it's MQTT, right? That's going to be, right? It's a message brokering system. But that's an IoT, it's an IoT form of communication that's not normally covered in, like, say, an IP-based networking class. So I think that would be really fun to do too. So you can see there's a ton of stuff that you could do. So we're not going to lack for options to try, right? And then if we find something that we like, that teaches a topic that we want to teach, so that fits into what we're doing with the classroom, you can easily find or just integrate that into the classroom.
Could I ask you a quick question?
Yeah.
Okay, so with the MQTT and some of these internet sites that are taking our data from our sensors when we report them, and then they do whatever, put it into a website or whatever. Do you see anything of how to build those? Because I think that at some point these companies are going to start charging us for our data or using our data for other things.
Okay. So I haven't researched it, but okay. The one example that I can think of is, like, so if there's a product out there called, is it called OpenBox? Open something. There's a Dropbox alternative, right? So where you actually control the data, right? So Dropbox, you have OneDrive, you got Google Drive, you got all these things. So all the stuff that I'm doing on Google Drive, like, I could set up a Raspberry Pi that has a similar, like, I could connect it to the internet using dynamic DNS, and I could store all of my data on my own hard drive and have it available from an app on my phone, right? And then I'm not paying somebody else for that service. Like, I build it myself. So I'm a huge fan of those kind of things. I would imagine that most of these things you could build your own version of it, right? I think the idea, or the reason why a lot of these companies exist, is because it's super simple to go, oh, I need this, click, 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 log in, here's the keys, I'm done, right?
Yeah.
So instead of having to build up the entire back-end infrastructure. So, I mean, cloud computing exists because it's easy to use, right? And it's rapid deployment. I don't have to wait for an IT department. I don't have to build it on my own. However, you can build your own cloud solution as well. Like, you can build your own virtualization and vSphere and other products. But you could do those things as well. So I don't know that there's, I think there may be some out there that are going to be more open source versus closed, but you can, I think, build anything that we're building, like, even like the initial state project that we're going to do later today. Like, we don't have to use initial state. I think you could set up your own web server and have, and build, and add the graphical components, and right, it would just take a whole lot longer, and you need a whole lot more skills.
Got it. Okay, thanks.
Uh-huh. I know that's true. There was when I left, I worked at Sandia National Labs, and when I left, I started working for a company called Net 21st, and there was a partner company that was, I can't think, Echo something, but what they were doing at the time, and this is back in like 1999, 2000, okay, 98, 99. They used, there are channels on the cell phone towers that at that time were used, they were like a back channel that you could get access to, and they actually built in the basement of our building, we were in an office building, 4-story building. They had a lab in the basement, and they had people building circuit boards in the basement where they would attach a sensor, like an IR sensor for a security box, right? And the box then had a cellular radio attached to it. And as long as you had you had access to a cellular tower, you could put this box literally in your cabin by the lake, right? As long as it had a cell phone reception, right? It would trigger, right? When the box triggered, it would actually send a message back to our servers that my company maintained, and then it would alert you. And this is pre-internet stuff. I mean, this is like, it wasn't even using the internet. It was using cellular transmissions to a point, and then from that point, it would then send a message to the servers. But so that entire back end was in-house. There was no cloud computing at that point. There was no, there wasn't, Dropbox didn't exist at that point. Like, none of that kind of stuff existed. So can it be done? Absolutely. It's just the level of skill, and you could build your own. I think Wise, like the company Wise, WYZE, they make a ton of really cool things, and they kind of got stung by that. They weren't going to charge end users for access to their stuff, but then the services that they were using to provide those services to their customers started charging for the service. So they had to then back out of that and start charging. So I agree with you. You're always kind of like, there's a certain level of charge, and can you do it on your own? Probably. It all depends on your solution or your system, right? What's going on with that? Anyways, sorry, long answer, but just kind of some examples to think about. The next example of tutorials is, so this is if you have, right, the Pi Top 4s. So this is kind of the direction I'm heading with a lot of my stuff. Well, I'm heading specifically for the robotic stuff, because we bought the kits for the robots, but these are pretty cool. Right, so if you haven't, and I have these things, so I can do a show and tell and show you these things, so you see what I'm talking about. But they have an electronics kit that comes with the Pi Top, right? And you plug in this base plate, and they have these really cool tutorials that you go through, and you basically, which is neat, you actually connect your Raspberry, you connect the Pi to the network, and it'll display the IP address. And you would then go through, and you would, up here, you would connect your Raspberry Pi across the network. And then you can do this lab on the Raspberry Pi. Right? So, and you're testing code, you're sending code, and you can connect up things, and they're gonna have you, I think they're gonna have you, was this one playing the music? Looks like I was playing some kind of animated image. So this is gonna actually play an animated image on the little screen that's on the computer. So I'm excited about this, just to kind of play with it, to kind of see what we can do with it. More, most specifically for me. And I think they obviously have more, I think, let me see if this one has a sensor attached to it or not. Also, this is going to pull some data on light pollution, so that's kind of cool. But it is actually pulling. I mean, that's an LED that you're going to plug into, and it's kind of walking you through. It uses it's similar to the Quick Connect stuff. But I don't know. I thought these were really neat from that standpoint. Specifically, like for those that are interested in robotics, this platform. I really like this platform because it walks you through how to build the robot, right? So as you go through, you build out the robot, right? So the students can work through this. And then, right, you've got some object recognition that you're doing here. And so you're gonna actually get, within about 5 or 6 lessons, you're getting into using cameras and servos to monitor, to monitor the environment and make decisions. There's a claw that you put on it and control the claw. So this is what my course this fall. I have a robotics course this fall. It's going to be based on this material here, to run through these, and there's 10 challenges, right? So 1 challenge a week. Each of my students will have their own robot, and then there's an advanced section here, the robotics 102, which is going to be right, facial recognition, behavioral enhancements, emotion detector, like so, and it actually looks like you're going to actually have it mimic your emotions, things like that. So I think really fun stuff. That I like it. I think it's fun. If you have a PyTop 4, then you have access to this for free. There is there's a classroom setup, but I don't know how that works, and I don't know what it costs. I'm not overly concerned about that because I'm going to have them do the projects and then record, a video or pictures of the projects functioning. But there's also, they have Python principles, right? And then if you're with students where you want to use block programming, there's component tutorials that use the block, like similar to Scratch, but it's block. And then they've got some challenges that you can do as well. So game development, there's some game development stuff as well. So it's a lot of cool stuff. I'm a big fan, always have been, of PyTop from almost day one. Their equipment, I've used their equipment a lot and had really good success with it. So I'm excited to get started with this stuff. But this is another set of tutorials that you could maybe mimic or use if you have the Pi 4s, then you can use it. If you don't have the Pi 4s, then you can probably create something similar, right? So pretty cool stuff.
So that was my question. Can you use the Pi 3? What is it, the B plus or something?
I don't think you can, because I have the Pi 3 laptop and I've got the PyTop seeds, and when you go click on it, it says, hey, these are designed for the Pi 4 stuff. So they've kind of unfortunately abandoned, right, the older product from a tutorial standpoint going forward.
Okay.
I still use the PyTop seeds. I have PyTop seeds in my lab, and I have PyTop seeds at the house, so I can see what's going on them on the computer when I'm doing a lab with students, so that I'm not, even if I have it shown up here, I have a copy over here that I can see the actual screen. So yeah, so that's kind of a PyTop 4 thing. But I want you to be aware of it. It's on the list. Tom's Hardware also has a ton of tutorials, right? And so the first part of it is like kind of creating and getting the Raspberry up and running, right? But then as you get lower down, they go over, right? So how to set up a web server, running Google Stadia, turn the Raspberry Pi into a KVM over IP, right? Then they talk about hats. So there's lots of these little, they've kind of built it into the entire tutorial here. So I think that one's really good. I don't know if you guys have heard of Tom's Hardware before, but Tom's Hardware has a ton of really good information. I use it a lot in my hardware class for students to learn about the hardware components. But this is under the Raspberry Pi section. So that's also on the list of websites to take a look at. Pi Hut, this is, so Pi Hut and Pi Moroni are two UK-based, they build cool parts, right? They build a lot of cool stuff. And their tutorials, again, like SparkFun, are going to be kind of based on the products that they have, right? Here's a mini cluster using zeros. Like there's all kinds of cool things that they have. Here's an adapter that allows you to connect an SSD drive to the USB. And then you can boot from that on the Raspberry Pi 4 if you didn't know. You can boot from a thumb drive or an SSD drive on a Raspberry Pi 4. So you can literally turn it into a server with hard drive space. Lots of cool stuff, but they have a lot of really cool projects as well. Again, like I said, most of it's going to be geared towards their product, but you will find some really cool non-product based ideas. And like running 2 monitors, I just said how to run 2 monitors. Here's a tutorial about the Raspberry Pi, so that kind of stuff. So I like them as well. So I put them on the list so that you are aware of them. This whole list is not the entirety of all the tutorials available out there, just the things that I'm familiar with, the things that I have used, or things that I know would work well. So I thought this was interesting too, right? Pico C, C++ development using Windows, right? So for those that are programming instructors, right, that deal with C and C++, right, you can use the Pico and Windows to do right, that kind of development. But then again, Pi Moroni, they build a lot of really cool. Here's another getting started with a Raspberry Pi Pico. So that one looks like a fun tutorial to go through. But all of these are going to be, not all, most are going to be based on their really, their product is outstanding. It's just, they have a lot of really fun stuff. But yeah, so those are all, again, another set of tutorials. So SparkFun, Pi Hut, Pi Moroni, Adafruit, a lot of those are going to all be based on their product that they built. And then I came across this kid. This kid's got to be like maybe 10. Rishab teaches tech. So this is his playlist for Raspberry Pi Mini projects, right? Python and Flask, right? Somebody mentioned that earlier. So here's another tutorial on how to run Python and Flask. Joystick sensor. Here's using SMS using Azure Logic apps with Twilio. Like, holy cow, what? Facial recognition. He does a bunch of cool stuff. These are the 5 that are Raspberry Pi based. I don't know. I just think 6,000 subscribers. He needs more subscribers. You guys should go subscribe to this kid. He's awesome. But I mean, like he's doing, I mean, someone look at some of the stuff that he's doing. He's doing crypto mining. He's doing QR codes with Python. Just ridiculous. Web scraping with Python, automation with Python. Super smart kid. So I want to share him because I just get a kick out of all of his stuff. He does really fun stuff. Rishab teaches tech. And then the last one here, tutorials for Pi. I have not, I put it at the very end because I haven't really used this website in the past, but they look like, right? So here's a TensorFlow with Google Coral. Somebody mentioned ESPs yesterday, Marcelo did, right? Bluetooth connections between ESPs and Raspberries. Like, so I saw, here's a Pi Samba server, OCR, solar powered battery, Bitcoin miner, small agricultural system using IoT. I'm like, I'm going to put it out there. I don't know the quality of the tutorials. I don't know, other than I thought they were cool. So this one is one of those I'm not 100% on, and I put it out there with the one word of caution. I haven't tried them. So everything else that I've shown you so far, I've tried at least one of their assignments or their projects throughout time. So those are really cool. Those are the set that I wanted to kind of share with you today. These are all listed in our web document. Okay. Yeah, so good. I'm glad. So we shared that document there. Can you set up a backup system that backs up your laptop to an external hard disk? I think you can set up the Raspberry Pi as a backup server. I think it's possible. I'm going to share this one. This one's just thrown into the chat by Marcelo. Random Nerd Tutorials. This is an appropriate name site for us. Well, at least for me, I guess. So, awesome. Yeah, okay. I'm going to add this to the list. All right, so it's been added to the list. Does anybody else have any other sites that they're familiar with? For the backup system, Tim, if you would mind putting that on the parking lot, like do a note and put it on the parking lot so that I remember to circle back around to that. I like that idea. I think that's a really good, I know you can, like if you set it up as a Samba server, it could just be the endpoint for backups on Windows, right? Because it's just at that point, an SMB file share. So it could be the storage location. Right? You throw a disk on it and then have it be the storage for that. And that's a super cheap way. The other thing I know you can set up Raspberry Pis as NAS devices as well. So you could buy, and I've seen, yeah, there is, I know I've seen Raspberry Pi NAS. So you can 3D prints or buy cases. Let's do. Yagi. You guys use Yagi. I create a NAS drive, so all 3DP. So that one maybe. So here's a case that you could 3D print. Looks like there's a screen on it. So they put a screen on the front there, which means I think the Raspberry Pi is probably mounted left to right in this box. Wow, look at that. That's neat. Raspberry Pi, SD cards. Yeah, so you could build a NAS, right? Pi NAS. I don't want to see ads. We need to get the ad blocker. Here's another one that you could do with fan cooling for the drives, and this is using full drives, right? Yeah, so like that kind of thing, I don't know, to me, that's kind of a cool project that if you have access to a 3D printer, obviously, I do, so I'm excited about that. So, but I could build, right? You could build a NAS device, right? You can put NAS software on it, which means you can use it as a backup device, right? And you can connect, connect computers or network, across the network. You can send your backups there. So yeah, so I would think, the answer is yes. And the reason I kind of, when people ask those things, I want to kind of go and do this. Is I want you to see, right? And I know all of you, can do this without any help, but I want you to see, because I know a lot of folks get really concerned about, well, I don't know what I need to do or how to do it. Like, well, let's just go find stuff. Like there's people out there that are sharing all this stuff all the time. I mean, I think if you see me look for it and find it, and you can, it's repeatable, right? So, I mean, look at all these little NAS devices that you can, these are all on Yagi, which means you can probably download these, right? And then print them and then go to town, right? Totally awesome. I love it. Awesome. Okay. Are there any other, does anybody else have any other tutorial sites that they want to share with us? That they're aware of, that you've used? Raspberry Pi, Arduino, either one of those is fine. IoT, anything in that realm. Trying to see if I missed anything else. I think I've got most everything. German. How did that happen? Has anybody ever seen that? Is anybody else only in German? As far as the Google Docs? All right. So I'm not seeing any other listing of tutorials and things like that. I think right now is a great time to take a little 10-minute break. And when we get back, we're going to make an attempt at this lab right here, block ads using AdGuard. So we'll try to get that one done this morning and see where we go from there. The web page, or the trying to get the link. So for those that don't have, and I think it's in the chat a couple times, but oops, that's not it. The link to our Google Drive. I'm gonna go ahead and put that again. And so the link that I just put there, that's the link to the Google Drive. In the Google Drive, there's 2 documents. The first document, status of Cisco IoT. Right, that's your opportunity on the bottom of that document to post comments, concerns, ideas on what to do with the Cisco IoT fundamentals courses going forward. They are end of life at the end of July next year. And this is our opportunity to share information back to Cisco. And then the second one is the website link. So every website that we looked at today, so far this morning, is in that document. And most of them, the tutorial ones, are all listed at the bottom of the document under a tutorial heading. All right. So if you want to take a look at those, great. I think we should take a 10-minute break, and we're going to come back and we're going to do the AdGuard assignment and see how that goes. Hopefully it goes good. So I will see you in 10 minutes. Okay. I'm here. I'm trying to finish my protein bar. Ran out of time. There we go. Marcelo, is that was that board from Thingiverse? Oh, there we go. Cool.
Well, I don't know. I don't remember who shared with us.
Okay, yeah.
I'm at this point. I mean, we did change a little bit
Mm-hmm.
because it was kind of hard to remove the SD card and the
Right.
sides to connect the USB stuff. So we kind of took some of the side, put a little bit of opening underneath the SD card, so it's easier to remove and insert.
Pull
So
out.
yeah.
So that one's pretty cool.
Yeah, that is cool. That's an interesting one.
Plug them together.
Yeah.
So for those of you that have,
I use a lot this.
right, Thingiverse is awesome, right? It's like, oh, what do I need? Let's go and find one and then make
Right.
it. And then, in fact, we've used it for robotic platforms as well, like just the basic platforms. This one actually, they have a little rubber band thing that holds things, and it's kind of cool.
Right.
So yeah, so that's, oh, this is one, two. These are neat.
Yeah. Oh, this one has like the.
It has a 0 in it, and that looks like a PWM, right? A power management. Yeah,
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
that one is interesting. So I have a couple that I've done in the past. I don't know if I can find those. But I've got like I have an Arduino, or one that looks like this, but it has a Raspberry Pi and then an Arduino and a breadboard, which I think are really great. Like if you're going to have a yeah, something like this one, but it has our Raspberry and Arduino. Well, that's kind of a neat one too. Look at that case that you flip open and it has a breadboard on it.
That is funny.
That's pretty cool. Looks like that when it's closed, that when it's open. Yeah, I like having access to that printer. we got lucky. We got a printer and a laser cutter. We got a Glowforge.
Oh, okay.
So and then the roll spot. That's rid of roll spot. So we have this one.
Oh, okay.
The workhorse. No, we got the Pro XT is what we got. No, the XT is the tall one. We got this one, Pro S. So this one's pretty cool. It's really neat. Again, as soon as I got it, like the students unpacked it and had it up and running like an hour later. So it was awesome. So what do we want to print? All right.
Right. You mentioned something about the PyTops that you can go to their website and code from there. It's kind of the same thing with the PLApps for the Cisco classes.
Yeah, like,
do you find yourself using more just coding directly into the Raspberry Pi or using kind of like Jupyter Notebook? I do like Jupyter Notebook. I think it is useful. I think, for those that my class has no prerequisite. So
right.
I was just luckily that everybody that has signed up had some, programming experience.
Right.
But I thought it was useful having a Jupyter Notebook because you can explain what things are going to happen there right at the same, and doing the code at the same time.
Right. And I I agree with that part of it. I think it's the difficulty to get that installed. I mean, because we ran into, I mean, it was kind of a constant battle. We were always like running into problems to get things installed, and that was more my issue there. I really do like the explanations, right, as you go through and explains what's going on, and then the instructions can be right there, and then you can have code. A lot of the stuff in the connecting things, the code's already done for you with very few exceptions. And then as you move like into, say, the data analytics one, it was like the code was there for the first couple of projects, and then you had to kind of go back. You had to start building out the code. So I think I know I like that idea, that concept. But I kind of use both. Like I really,
Okay.
You know what I mean? Like I have them do their own thing in Python too. Like, so, in order to, at least starts the idea of this, of building out, when they're kind of doing let's say an LED, right? So if you're going to do an LED, you are, and I mean, to me, that's a script, right? It's a little bitty program. It's no real different than if you were to say, write a script to change a password in Windows, right? So there's a component of why I have them do like the scripts from scratch on their own, like from the beginning, not in Scratch, right? No, it's like when you have them, so that they kind of get used to like, hey, I can write this little snippet of code and have it do things, and I can repeat that over and over and over and over and over again. So then when they get to the server classes and we introduce them to PowerShell, like they're familiar already kind of with scripting and writing some code and being able to repeat that process and things like that. So I think there's a positive for both of those kind of worlds, right?
Right.
So a mix, for me, I like the mix, just to make sure that, especially with the more complicated ones, like especially the chapter 5 lab and the chapter 6 lab, those are both have some pretty complicated coding that, a new student that doesn't have any Python code would never make it through that. Like they would just never do. So in that case, where we can, sorry, my phone just went. We can let them do more complicated things. We can explain what the code is doing, but they don't have to come up with it from the beginning, right? Which then, because if that was there, then that would be a massive roadblock for them to be able to complete that project, complete the class. It becomes a lot more frustrating. But for them to be able to write code, to get a buzzer and a button to work, let's have them do that from the very beginning. Like let's do that from scratch, like because that's something doable, right? So I think I guess that's my opinion, right? So again, all the opinions expressed here are completely mine. So right or wrong, but yeah, I agree. I think that the Jupyter notebooks, it's one of those things, like if I wouldn't mind actually kind of building out like every single thing we did in that one interface, right? The thing about that though is it does remove it removes the student from actually interacting with the computer itself.
Right.
Because you're remotely connecting. So you just have to have whatever laptop or whatever you're working on. So I don't know. So I flip back and forth, right? I'm going to give you the answer I give my students, and it makes them mad. Like, well, it depends, right? and 45 minutes later, when I'm done, they're like, you could have just said no.
Marcel, I can kind of add to that. When I work with beginning students, yeah, it's okay to have them do a couple of things in that, but I can tell you the excitement that my students had when we did it in like groups of 2 projects, and they had to follow the directions without having the Jupyter notebook, and we use Pi My Life Up and all those resources, and it's, I think, a better thing for older students. So just keep that in mind. It depends what you're trying to get them to do. Otherwise, we're making these kids who have no brains, they just kind of type and they think that that's computing, and it's not.
Right. No, that's good to know. Yeah, that's good info.
Yeah, and
Thank you.
And yeah, and that's why I say I think you could do a balance. You could also on the Jupyter notebooks, I mean, you could eliminate the code pieces, and they have to come up. I mean, they have to write it from scratch too. So, and you can give them hints. I mean, that's what's neat. When you look at the big data, there was lots of coding that you had to put in there, but they always gave you a hint, like about what you should be looking for, so that you could go back and find previous examples. And like, again, I think that's a skill set that's really good for a student to like be able to go back and repeat things that they've already done. So, and then it starts to make sense when you tell them you should save all your code, right? Because you may reuse it, even if it's a simple turn on an LED light. Someday you may need that code elsewhere, and you could just copy and paste it instead of, recreating it from scratch, kind of a deal. So, but I like the both, and I think like I'm gonna, this fall when I do the further stuff with the PyTops and the robots, gonna see how that works, all right? Because our competitive robots, we do everything Python from scratch. So, but in there, I think we'd be able to actually, we could copy the code out and do things like that. And we run different motor controllers, on the competitive robots. So I want to get more students exposed to robotics, right, in the fun of that, so that we can find students that have a passion for it, that then want to kind of take that to the next level with the competitive teams. So anyways, all right, moving on.
Right.
Hopefully that helps. Sorry, I just saw something come through that I need to look at real fast. It's one of those things where we're all still working. Okay, we're good. I'm trying to apply. I have a bachelor's degree, right? So in every 3 years, I've got to go and justify why I'm allowed to teach. So I'm like, okay, forget it. So I've been trying to apply. New Mexico State has an online master's degree in IT, professional master's in IT, which fits the bill for me not having to do that over and over and over again. Every time I hit that target, I'm like, I took 6 certification exams in the last 2 years. Come on now. But they called me, so I gotta figure out what's going on there. We'll do that at lunchtime. Okay, let's get on to some good stuff. The 3D links are now in the bottom of our document. So awesome there. So those boards are really cool. If we ever get around to the show and tell part, and I can show you, I have a lab, like I have my personal kit. And my personal kit, actually, it sits in, like there's I don't know if you guys are craftsmen. I wanted to share the kit with you, so you kind of see what happens when you start doing this stuff. So I have everything. I try to get everything into this one dolly-based Craftsman toolbox, right? And it's got a big container, a medium container, and then drawers and stuff. So, but again, I think sharing all the little things, little trinkets and things that I have will help you kind of develop your own. I don't know. I've always been a fan of having my own tools, right? So when I was networking, building networks, I had my own set of tools, and I always bought quality tools. And when I'm a computer repair person, I have my own set of tools. And, and I think it's, now that I'm an instructor, I have my own set of tools. Like I have a Raspberry Pi and my tools and all the things that go along with that. So, sharing that, I think, with you, so you can see, well, these parts are, this is how I use these things. I think that would be really good. So I have that on my list of things if we have time throughout the week. But I do have some 3D printed, platforms that I think are really nice, that work really well. So it's a good way to have, real quick, be able to, instead of having pieces all over the place. So anyways, we'll try to get around to sharing that at some point this week, if we have time. So let's take a look at this. So Pi my life up. First of all, I love these guys. This project was updated in January. I think it was updated. It was updated using Buster, right? So we're using Bullseye, which is a newer one. So that may run us into problems, but I haven't seen anybody. So one of the things about them, at the very bottom, they have, people can can post about the project. I'm kind of scrolling down to the very bottom. So yeah, so the last post was January 13th, and he didn't have any issues. So we'll see. Hopefully we don't. Usually we don't. But in this guide, we're going to install AdGuard Home, right, which is it's an open source ad blocker. Going to install on the Raspberry Pi. And I mentioned Pi-hole before. Pi-hole, Pi-HOLE is another ad blocker. The difference between these two essentially is AdGuard comes with encrypted DNS and HTTPS right out of the box, and you have to add things to the to Pi-hole to get that stuff to work. So if you're using or wanting to use encrypted DNS, and encrypted HTTPS, then this is, I think they both work the same, right? They're going to both work. The other cool thing is there's a web interface, right? So then we can use it on a headless Raspberry Pi, which is what we tried to create yesterday, headless Raspberry Pis. So we don't have to have a monitor connected to it because we're going to use a web interface. And it's a beginner's project, right? So it's a beginner networking project. And so I really think this is a really good project for students to try, right? Because I think it gives them a practical network-based solution for ad blocking that they can build on their Raspberry Pi. Okay, Raspberry Pi, micro SD card, Ethernet cable, Wi-Fi. Those are the things that we need. Obviously, you should have a case. I'm not running a case right now. But keyboard and mouse, if you're going to connect to the, we're going to try to do everything remotely. I believe if we start looking through all of this, I think we can do everything from the terminal, right? So we don't really need, we can probably do this all SSH. So I just want to kind of run through it first. So one thing I do highly recommend if you're doing this in class, right? Do the update, sudo apt update, but don't do the upgrade for the software at the beginning of class, because then you'll have students that their computer will be upgrading the entire class. If you're going to do upgrades to the software, I tend to not do upgrades at all during the semester unless something is released that I feel we need to address. Okay, so at the beginning of the semester, I have them, hey, do the, we're going to get the installation done. We're going to do the updates on day one. So you have a fully functional day one operating system. And then we try not to do any updates to the end of the semester. They only release updates on the OS. They update the OS maybe 2 times a year, maybe 3, but most of the time it's 2 at the most. So you won't really, there won't be any big major differences, right? And then what I like knowing is that what we started with is what we end with. It's one of those. I know in the system admin classes, it's painful to tell the students once you have that first update, do not run any more updates throughout the semester, because which is really an anti-system admin. Like normally, yes, we want to do the updates and we want to run this, but I have actually had in server class an upgrade actually broke one of the labs, and it basically hung up a couple of machines. So we try to avoid that in the semester. So it's hard to explain this, do as I say, not as I do, right? Because what I normally would do is upgrade on a normal basis. Like I would keep my operating system up to date, and I would, make sure I have all the proper things in place. But for the purpose of a class, like I want to set up the machine to begin with. I want to get all the updates done before I start any projects. And then I want to have a copy of that, right? Using, which I didn't make a copy yesterday. I should have made a copy, but using the SD card copier when it comes to the Raspberry Pi, or say with the virtual machines, we run a snapshot. So we have copies of that system at that point. So I can recover back to that point, but then I don't really want to touch the upgrades. But for each of these assignments though, we want to do the update, right? And the reason we want to do the update is we want to get all of the current packages, the list of current packages, so that if I have to install something as part of my installation, of this particular lab, I have the current list. Does that make sense? So the idea of this, if you have a Windows machine and you go to updates, right? And you click on look for updates, okay? The Windows machine is gonna go check a repository of all of the current files, and it will tell you, hey, you're missing these updates, right? Linux does the same thing. The app update is gonna basically go to the repository of all of the operating system files and compare your file to the current file. So let's say, I don't know if there's anything specific in here that we can use, but let's say that you have, there's a piece of the operating system that is a 1.74 version that's on your desktop, and there's a 1.76 version available in the repository. That 1.76 version becomes the listed version. And if you were to do the upgrade, it would actually then replace the 1.74 version with the 1.76 version, okay? By not doing the upgrade, we have the list. And if I need that file as part of my installation of this project, then it would pull the newer version because I have it. It's a known update, right? Otherwise, it would stick with the original copy. Okay, so I do the update, but I don't do the upgrade at the beginning of all these projects. And I advise my students to probably not upgrade anything throughout the semester unless there's a known issue that we need to fix. Okay, so the first thing we need to do then is connect to our machine. So I'm going to do a CMD, and then we're going to SSH hi at, and then whatever your machine's IP address is. I thought we fingerprinted this yesterday. Interesting. Right. Coolio. All right, so SSH. So I have a terminal session with and I'm going to put that on the right-hand side and the instructions on the left. So then at the command prompt, sudo apt update. So all this is going to do is going to go out and grab the latest list of files, right? And on my case, all packages are up to date. It's because we installed it yesterday and nothing has changed since yesterday. All right. We're not going to do the upgrade. So we're going to go down number 2, to download home guard. We're going to use a wget command, right? So then I have this command, and I've tried this before. I don't know if it's going to work. So if I copy, it does work. Okay. So I just copied the file, this code over. So we're going to go out to AdGuard and we're going to download the tar file for this particular program. So I don't see any errors. Waiting response. Looks good. Saving the file. So that's number 2. Simply going out to the website for AdGuard and grabbing the file from there. Okay. The archive downloaded, right? So we need to extract it. So we'll copy this here as well. And then one time it works and the other time it doesn't. I love that. Try that again. Otherwise, we'll just start copying. All right. So some reason, okay, yeah, it's like a right click that it drops it in there. Kind of weird. All right. So we're just going to run the tar command to unzip this, to unpackage it. What is it called? I don't know what the right term is there, but extracting it, right? So enter on that one, and it created an AdGuard home folder, right? And a couple of items in that folder. Since we extracted the archive, we no longer need it, so we want to remove the So again, just kind of a, a system admin kind of a process here, like, hey, we've already extracted it. We already have the files. We don't really need this to be taking up space. So we're going to remove it. So one change to the directory. So CD, AD, TUAD, now we're in the AdGuard home directory. Awesome. Then we're going to install the software. So the command that we're going to run, sudo /AdGuard home -s install. So that's going to run. We do an ls here. We see the AdGuard home is it's a script here. We're just going to run that and do the installation.
Hey, Carrie, real quick. With a touch screen, do you know, is there a keyboard that pulls up on the touch screen, or do you have to have a keyboard that's connected externally?
I think there was a keyboard, but I haven't played with it in such a long time that I don't know. I don't know if the newer OS has it or not. Apologize.
That's all right. And then if not, how do I get the Raspberry Pi that's connected to my laptop to actually turn on to my laptop?
So how do you have it connected to your laptop?
Via a Ethernet cable.
All right, so then open up a command prompt and then ping the name that you said. I think you said it as Raspberry Pi 14.
Okay,
Ping
so
Raspberry Pi 14.local
I don't know how to do that.
from a command prompt.
Yeah, I'm in the command prompt. I don't know how to do anything else in command.
So type the word ping.
Okay. PING space, and then the name of the computer, which is Raspberry Pi 14 .local local. So the command should be PING space Raspberry Pi 14 .local. Yep.
Before you hit enter,
Too late.
did you hit enter already?
Yeah.
Okay. Did it give you what looks like an IP version 6 address, or did it give you an IP version 4
I know
address?
nothing about networking, so I
Okay.
don't know. It gave me an FE80.
That's an IP version 6. So then do the up arrow.
Okay.
And then don't backspace, but use the left, the back arrow and go between the ping and the name and put so ping space -4 space. And then hit
-4 space. Okay.
And now you should get a IP version 4 address.
169.254.
So to connect then from your command prompt, you would type SSH. I'm trying to highlight. So here's my command here. So you left the username as Pi. So we're going to do SSH. So secured shell space the username, which is Pi, at the @ and then the IP address that's listed in your response down there, 169.254.
Got it. I was curious how you got that number. Oh, 16.
So the way you have your Raspberry Pi connected, you're not connected to the internet. So running the.
It shows internet. Well, it says turn on wireless LAN. I don't know.
Well, 169 won't. That already tells me you won't be able to connect.
Okay.
Because like this, then like the sudo apt update command will fail. The get the commands are going to fail. What we need is your laptop connected to your network, like a switch, and then your Raspberry connected to that same switch. But that switch then has, we'd have internet connectivity from there.
So when I tried the SSH, it says the authenticity of host blah can't be established. ECDSA key fingerprint is blah. Or
And then
you want to continue?
And then you type the word yes.
Warning,
Yeah.
permanently added. Okay, so the password is the raspberry. Why are you not typing? Okay, then it gives me the pi at blah password, but it won't let me type.
Are you getting a prompt like this?
No, it shows. So after I typed yes, it says warning, permanently added 169 blah to the list of known hosts. And then it said pi at blah password.
And then you
And
type the password.
it won't let me type.
It is
password
typing.
won't show on
It
the
won't
screen,
show
right?
you typing.
Oh,
Yeah, the password doesn't show you typing.
oh, good. So when it says permission denied, okay,
Typed it in wrong.
because I didn't know it was actually
Right.
typing. Got it. Okay, I'm on
All right.
green.
Then you have a green prompt. Okay, so so then here's the issue that I see that's going on. Right now you have a laptop, right?
Yep,
And you have a wire connected to your Raspberry Pi.
yep.
So this lab, there is software out here on the web that we need to get to, right? So the way you're connected, this Raspberry will never get to the web. So what we need to happen here is we need you need to, I don't know how your network is set up, but there should be a switch somewhere that's connected to a router, right? That's connected to the web. We need your laptop connected there and your, right? We need that set up because then I can access the internet to get the updates, to get the files that we need, that kind of thing. So normally, like if you're in a classroom, right? If you have computers connected, then if you can take, and this, I don't know your situation, but I would take, if you have two desktops, right?
Take one of the blue wires.
Take the blue wire and plug it in there, and take the other blue wire and plug it in there, and you should be on their network. You should be. I don't know how the security is set up. So that would be my plan.
Right, so stealing one wire. But I only need one, right? Hopefully.
Well, you need one for your laptop and one for your
Raspberry.
Raspberry.
Oh, that's not gonna work because the only other one is the computer I'm currently on.
Well, the computer you're currently on. So the computer you're currently on and the one behind you, right?
Yeah.
Are they both on the same network?
Yeah, I think so.
So then plug the Raspberry into the wire that's behind you, and then you'll access it from the computer that you're watching this on. We won't be using the laptop.
Okay.
Right, so here's what
But
we got
I
going on.
only need to take out one blue wire and connect it to the Raspberry.
So then, yeah, so then what we've got is like, if this is your PC, right, the one that you're sitting at right now, right? And then this is the one that's behind you. Okay. So we're not worried about this. We're gonna take that out of the picture. Right?
Okay.
This is already connected. And then we're gonna take the cable that's here and plug it into the Raspberry.
All right, so unplugging from the laptop to plug into, well, but the problem is then I don't know how to get a keyboard because it's on.
You won't need a keyboard
Okay,
because that's what SSH is gonna do for you. You're gonna type on the computer that you're sitting at, and you're gonna connect to the computer, connect to the Raspberry the same way that you currently connect.
hold on. Okay, so the Raspberry is connected to the one behind, check. And then
Okay,
the
so
computer,
this cable that was here on the behind, it's now connected there.
yep,
Okay, so now on the PC that you're on,
yep.
open up a command prompt,
Oh, okay.
and we're gonna do the same process that you just did. You already know the IP address should have, no, the IP address won't stay the same. You're gonna do the ping again. So ping -4.
Oh, it's not the right one.
You have Raspberry 14.local.
Okay.
And you should get, you should get a completely different address this time.
It says not recognized as an internal or external command. Oh, that's because I typed it wrong. Hint, pipe
Wow,
instead of ping.
that'd be a first. I've never heard of that.
Yeah, it went from went to a 10.
Yeah, that's fine. So what's
Okay.
it's 10 dot something?
Yeah. All right, so then we're going to.
So then you're gonna do SSH,
SSH.
pi at whatever that number is.
It says SSH is not recognized.
Oh.
SSH pi at.
What?
There, I can actually share screen on this one if you want.
I'm trying to think, is it a, yeah, go ahead.
Oh, it's, you'll have to stop.
Yeah, I'm working on it.
I'm sure it's our lovely network.
Oh, that sounds like, oops, why? Oh, stop share. I'm trying to wait. I think it's, seems like the operating system.
No, go away.
So it's Windows 10, it should have SSH. Does anybody have an idea why Windows 10 SSH command wouldn't function? Does that have to do with where she's at?
I think it's faster to download PuTTY and just use it.
She's on a, aren't you on a Mac?
No, this is a school
Your
PC.
Windows
Oh, got
10
it.
right here. Yeah, so PuTTY may be the better way to go.
But what's funny is it worked on the laptop.
Right, that's what I'm because it seems weird that you have a Windows 10 machine and SSH doesn't function. Like I'm trying to see if there's nothing wrong with that command. This command looks fine. And it's not recognized as an internal external command. It's like they read. I don't know. Maybe they don't have the. That's weird. That's really weird. Okay, so then here's what I would do.
IT does limit everything.
So are you're able to install stuff on the computer you're sitting at?
Yes, which took like 5 years to get.
Okay, so on a web browser, ninite.com, ninite.com. I don't. So this website, showing you this website, if you didn't already know about it, is worth the price of admission for the whole week. So, so Ninite is awesome. Use on here. We're gonna find. I don't know where PuTTY is on this one. I'm looking.
So while
right
I
down here.
have admin access on my computer, this website is blocked by
Really?
USD.
That's awesome. Okay, so you're gonna have to actually go to the PuTTY website to do it. But while we're here, I want to show you, if you didn't know about this website, like every single program you see here, all you have to do if you want to install Chrome on the computer, you click, that. If you want 7-zip, if you want Python, if you want VLC, Foxit Reader, right? AVG. I like to use Glary Utilities a lot. So Glary Utilities over here, right? You click on the things that you want installed. Like, so this is really nice for a brand fresh new computer. You can pick, 5, 10, 6, whatever number of things you want, and you scroll down and hit the Get Ninite, right? And when you do that, it'll download an executable. And when you run the executable, it will install every single program that you've chosen. And it removes any of the, what I would consider crapware, right? What used to be the ASCII's toolbar and all the extra stuff that you normally have to kind of tell it not to install, right? All of that stuff gets eliminated from the installation, and we'll install all of those programs all with one single click. And then in today's example, if you need PuTTY, you can come and click on PuTTY, right? Click on PuTTY, click Get Your Unedited. It'll download this executable, click the executable, and it installs PuTTY for you. And then you're done. Once it's done, like it'll be done shortly. So because you can't get to this website, then you need to look for PuTTY. And I would search like PuTTY SSH to get to putty.org. And then click download PuTTY here at the top. Hopefully it's not blocked as well.
That one was not,
Okay.
although when I click on the Windows installer, it says site can't be reached.
So if you click download that, and let's see, the MSI installer, I think you probably could get away with the very first one.
Yeah. That's what I
MSI.
tried. And when I click on that, it says this site can't be reached. The connection was reset.
That may be that sounds like your network.
Yeah.
There's binary files too, so you can do the PuTTY executable here. One down.
Same thing.
All right.
I love schools.
Yeah, especially just prevents you from doing your job.
Anything.
Yeah.
Which is why I wanted to do the PD here and not on my own laptop, because on my own laptop, it's no problem.
Everything would work. At that point, I don't know.
That's all right. You can get everyone else started and we'll try to.
Oh, you know what we could do? Let's do this. Is there an email that I can send it to that won't be shredded as well?
Maybe. MAHALE, right there. At egsd.net.
I'm just going to put PuTTY, and I'm going to attach the MSI for you. Oh, it's doing it twice. It worked the first time I tried it. I'm gonna delete one of those and send you that. Okay, let's see if that works. Otherwise, we unfortunately need to head on.
Yeah, I get it.
Okay. So PuTTY, if you need PuTTY, you just walked you through 2 different ways to get PuTTY. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, Gary's like, maybe they removed it by policy, and I think they probably did, like, remove SSH, because SSH should be there. It's part of the command prompts. Or it's, I guess, accessible from the command prompt. Okay, so where are we at? We are on, I don't know, step 3. We got step 3 done. Step 4, we got step 4 done. Step 5, I got step 5 done. I haven't run the installation. Oh, but she's at a school. Does she have home? I don't think she has home.
What do you mean?
Windows Home versus Windows Professional.
Oh,
I would
don't
think,
know.
I think professional at work, I would think.
But
I don't know,
Outlook
maybe.
blocked access to the following potentially unsafe attachment.
Oh my gosh.
I'll send you my Gmail.
There you go. And I can, I'll send it to you via Gmail. Send it to my Carrie at my IT instructor, and then I'll just reply back and attach it. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and do the installation here. So I copy this to the clipboard. And I gotta do this funky little, like sometimes it works perfect, sometimes it doesn't work perfect. I don't know what's going on here. Kind of weird. Am I sharing my screen, or are we not sharing my screen anymore? We're sharing my screen. Okay. So it's not letting me copy for some reason again. So sudo dot forward. So my question is, who's already done? I know there's somebody here that's already just gone through this whole thing. All right, sudo adguard s install. Okay, we're gonna do the installation. And while the installation's going, we'll jump over here. Gary's done. Oh yeah, static on the school would be. Okay, I'll get to that question. Let me get this. Let me attach and see if we can get this over there. I put your email as the subject. That's awesome. All right, that's off. Okay, so I got my install just finished, but so static IP on a school network. Okay, so I'm gonna get somebody in trouble today, I think. IP config on your computer, right? The computer that you're working on. If you do IP config /all, right? You should be able to see your network here, right? So this is my my Intel gigabit network. If you're on a wireless, it'll be your wireless adapter. Like I have one, but I've got it disconnected at this point. So what we're looking for is right, what your IP address is, and then what your subnet is, right? And then based on that, right? So based on this, I know that 172.17.69, right? The things that are masked here, that's my network, okay? And then 132 is my computer. My thinking is you can, if you just assign yourself one that's in this range, right? Maybe in the high, like the low 200s. Like, so if I was on your network, yeah, no, I don't think students will be able to do that. So AdGuard may not be like, that may be not a thing that we can do in your classroom. But for you to get this to work, right? I'm thinking, right, I'm thinking if this was me and I was in your space and this is what my machine said, I would statically assign myself like 205, 172.17.69, 205, following these same, the rest of these items as exactly the same is what I would do. And you're basically just taking a risk that 205 has or hasn't been assigned by DHCP. But normally, right, especially if you have a class C, right, it's not normal, right, in my experience, to see numbers in the 200 range, unless they're way high, like 250s, 240s that are networking, like somebody's using the end components as networking components. So like 205 to 230 usually are available kind of spots that you could try. If you get a conflict, then change it to, you know, go up 1, go up 10, some other number until you don't get a conflict. And again, only temporary. And then as soon as we're done, like undo the machine so that we're not causing problems on their network. That's what I would do, right, to get it to work temporarily. If you have a 255 number here, 255, and you're running off of a class B network, you've got lots of space. So you could easily pick like 175, 175, and you'd be fine. Like something with high numbers on both of those last 2 digits. High numbers being something above 150 and below 255. Not using 255. Okay, hopefully that helps you. All right, so we got some dashboards. All right, we got a couple of people already at the dashboard. I love it. Sweet, sweet, sweet. And as I'm cruising along, I mean, I think what's nice, and I'm hoping you're seeing from the installation, you know, from the guide, like these guides are really good. They explain what's going on in between. They give you the code, right? Once we have it installed and up and running, then you're going to do some configuration. So you can actually then at that point where you get to the configuration, which I haven't seen this configuration, but I think there's easily a way to construct a lesson around how that stuff works, right? So then it's not a matter of, oh, all we did was type a bunch of commands and then we're done. Once we get done with it, we're going to have an ad blocker and there's going to be some configurations that we can do, right? So we can screen out some stuff. We can try different things. Oh, why did it come back wrong? M-H-E-I-N-T-Z.
I also sent you an email, so you can just respond.
I'll respond to that one. Because it came back as it doesn't exist. That's weird. We're having a hard time with this one. That's putty. All right, doing it again. All right, so I sent the email. Okay.
Quick question.
Yeah.
Oh, now I forgot. Because I'm like doing different things at once. It had to do with the static IP. No. Okay, if it comes back, I'll
Okay.
Thank
Let us know. All right, so, okay, so AdGuard, I'm on step 6. I just did step 6. I did the installation on step 6.
I got it.
Okay,
Okay, the Miro dashboard at my school, it opens at home, that's what it is. But at school, it won't even open because it says it's an insecure website.
it doesn't like, oh, it doesn't like the AdGuard.
No, I'm talking about the dashboard.
Oh, Miro.
Get into it? Yeah, Miro. It's saying it's an insecure website, like maybe the certificate doesn't match or something, but I just thought you should know.
Okay,
I was gonna use it in class. I'll try and figure it out.
okay, and I'm wondering because, yeah, it says it's unsecure, but it's using HTTPS, so I'm not sure why they. I'm not sure why.
I'll talk to our network.
Okay. All right. Okay. Yeah. Let's install. Once the install has been completed, you'll see the message appear in your command line. You will see a message appear. Oh, action install has been done successfully on Linux systemd. You should see 2 URLs provided in this message. Whoa. Oh, right here, these 2. All right. Now the second address is the one you'll be using to access your web interface from another device. So this first one, right, local. Second one is remotely. So then now that we've got it installed, we can use the web interface. First load the AdGuard home web interface and go through the initial setup. Okay, so before we can configure AdGuard, we need to load up its web interface. So accessing the web interface only requires you to access a web browser on the same network as your Raspberry Pi. So to access the AdGuard web interface, you need to know your Raspberry Pi's IP address. Yep, we know that. You can either use the name that provided at the end of the previous section. Alternatively, you can use the following command to retrieve. Oh, you don't need to worry about that. We already have it right here. Once you know the address, you can now access the web interface. Oh, so this wants to go. We're going to grab, actually, we're not going to grab that. We're going to copy this. We're going to bring up a new web page. Paste that in, and then where this IP address is with the brackets, we're going to take out that, including the brackets, and we're going to put in your address to your Raspberry Pi, right? So in my case, right here, HTTP 172.17.69.171:3000. So we're using port 3000 to connect to this device. Right, and then there's the. So I'm gonna leave that in the background. I'm gonna put this over the top of it. Right, so we've got welcome to AdGuard, get started. Okay, so we're running accessing the web interface. We did step 1, and we didn't need to do step 1 because it gave us the IP address, and we did step 2 to access the AdGuard home. Okay, so now we need to configure this AdGuard. Okay, we're just going to click on the getting started button. Configure the ports and interfaces you want AdGuard to operate on within. So most people will be able to skip the settings on this page. However, if you're using another program that will be using port 80, you can change this setting by providing. All right, so we're not at this point doing anything. Like, this is the only thing running on this computer. You could use port 8080 as a good alternative to port 80. It's going to be.
Will this interfere with anything else we're doing if we leave it as 80?
And I just thought about that. So let's take a look. I'm glad I have this in the background. I had the same thought going, I wonder what port this other one's going to use. So let's find.
Well, my point was, as long as we're here to change it now.
Right. And I agree. That's why I'm taking a look at, does this is going to send information. It's not really going to use, I don't think. We could use 8080 because I wasn't planning on putting the website on this. I was planning on us having a different SD card. So it shouldn't be a problem. I'm thinking it shouldn't be a problem. I'm just going to look through these commands. This is the next project. Not sure what so it's monitoring a service. So it shouldn't be needing, and there's not any kind of web-based thing on this. I think we're okay. I really do. Yeah. I'm going to leave it. I think if it becomes an issue, I think we can actually change it if we really wanted to. But this is the only thing that's going to be running on this device that we're going to try to access. So I think that's fine. I think DNS, 53s, that's the normal number. So we're fine there. And then AdGuard server needs a static IP address. All right. So we're going to leave the port numbers, 80, 53, click next. Going to create a username. And password for authentication. Start AdGuard. You configure the device to use. Well, we need to go and change. We need to change the IP address on our. So we need to go back here. And I'm just going to set that one statically. I know I have other machines that are going to use it, so it would be fine. Config. So 80. I just set, so I use this if config command here to set, I just set the address exactly the same on my network. Shouldn't have any conflicts at that point. So we only have these couple machines on. I'm not going to make any other changes today. So we should be good. So sudo if config space, and then you have to put in the adapter, and then your IP address, and then net mask, whatever the net mask is. So that should sort of switched it from being a DHCP address to a static address. All right, and then go back over here. So to start using AdGuard, you need to configure your devices to use it. So you have to change your home DNS server or your DNS settings to use this. Computer's acting silly again. Okay. Open your preferences in the router. Oh wait. So to do this, when you want your home router, connect to your home router, and you'll need to configure them manually. So what are they having us do on the router? That's weird. Oh. Okay, so this one, the way this is written is they're having you change the settings for your DNS on your router. So then everybody in the network will point to the router, and the router will then point to this as the primary DNS. I think for this project today, we can just point our local machine to the DNS on this computer, because it should have, if I'm not mistaken, it should have it'll already have the router address. So if I just run my DNS through this, it'll forward it to it should forward it to the router, if I'm not mistaken, right? Am I thinking wrong through that, right? So my thinking is this instruction wants us to change the router to point to this DNS, right? And what I'm thinking I can do is I should be able to tell my computer to point to this DNS, and still be able to use, I'll be able to use the ad blocking features of the DNS, but still leave everything else alone. Right? I think, which is how Pi-hole works. Scroll down so I'm on the same place. So once we're done with the configuration, I'm going to just point my computer's DNS to the Raspberry Pi, and we'll see how that works. Because I really don't want to mess with, I don't want to mess with the server or the routers. So Gary has a link there, or not a link, but some information about installing apps even when you don't have admin privileges. All right, so I'm going to click next on this one and then open the dashboard. I'm going to log in. Okay, so there's my dashboard. So then what I'm going to also do now is on my local computer, I'm going to point I'm pointing my DNS to the Raspberry Pi. And I want to actually, let's do this first. I want to, before I do that, I'm going to go back to, so this is how my computer was set up before. So it's regular, right? It's regular setup. If I go to command prompts, oops, I can't go to that one. I got to bring another one up. So if I do IP config, I do default gateway. Oops, I want to do all. So as far as the explanation, right? So this is my setting right now. So 132, and then I've got my DNS server is my router, and then I've got 8.8.8 on the back end of that. And this is provided through DHCP, okay? And then does anybody have a website that deals ads on a normal basis that are not going to be inappropriate? Like that's a so this is one of those, okay, let's see what happens here. Like I don't know, like is there like news sites? Are they gonna, like, I don't know who would.
YouTube always has ads.
There you go. Because I don't know that YouTube pulls the ads off, right? Slashdot has ads. All right, so see from the web, sponsored links, this kind of stuff. There's a bunch of ads, a bunch of ads, right? So this is my computer as it was regularly, right? So ads, luckily it's for a Dodge Ram, not completely inappropriate. So that's good. All right, so then I'm gonna go to my, network settings again. And I am going to change my DNS settings for my network to point to my new ad blocker. Okay, so 172, 17, 69, 171. Awesome. Close that, close that, close that. And then we have, I still need another command prompt. Oops. So I want to then again look at my configuration, and we can hopefully see, now you can see my DNS server is my Raspberry Pi, and my backup 8.8.8.8 is missing. So all of my DNS settings are going to go through that Pi. Okay. And when I
So what did you have? Well, I need to back up a step. What did you have to change on your actual router?
I didn't change anything on my router on purpose. I'm trying to avoid changing the router.
Right.
And I'm
Okay.
trying to avoid ads, but look, I still got ads, right? So I don't think that's going to change. Let's check that out. So slash. And so it should have, right? Because remember when we did the pie hole one, like this stuff disappeared, right? So
Right.
like these all look a lot different now. Like, so you're starting to see some things being blocked and other things not being blocked. Like, because now we don't have a big banner. We have these little bitty things that have, ad choices. Like, so the ad choices stuff, this is kind of messed up here too. So there's something happening. So there's my DNS queries. Here's blocked by filters. So I've got some things being blocked. Right. Ad guard, add away, right? So those are all. So then we haven't done any configuration at all. So this is just as it comes out of the box. So I'm curious, right? Because now we have, to me, I'm thinking, well, how do we get rid of these ad choice things? Because it looks like ad choices doesn't get blocked out of the box, because they're still there, right? So that would be, and that we didn't get any passes. So we completed, open the dashboard, right? Accessing the dashboard, we've got the dashboard, that's fine, sign in. So on the dashboard, so we got a menu, settings, filters. So I'm gonna bring this up as the full dashboard now. So settings, general settings. I wonder, like, so blocked by filters, and what's the block list? Oh, you can add block list. Okay. Settings here, general settings. Block domains using filters and host files. Add guard browsing security web. So add, we'll check if the domain is blacklisted by the browsing security web service. It is a privacy friendly API. Okay, so then these are things that you can turn on and turn off, right? So then we can kind of work through this. There's a parent control. You can also do ensure safe search, right? So browsing security web services enable safe browsing. Log configuration, anonymize, don't save the full IP address of the client in the logs. So this looks good. 90 days of logs is fine. 24 hours is fine. We're looking at that. So then block services. So we can block services. Look at that. All right, so I'm curious now, right? So Amazon. So spell Amazon correctly. All right, so Amazon comes up, right? So good. And then if I come back over here, I think it's because I'm not, see, it's not acting the way I want it to act. And I think that might be because I don't have my router pushing everything here, but all of my stuff is going through here. It should go through DNS. So why would that not work? So DNS queries blocked by filters. Right, so there's the request count. So it sees me going there, but it didn't block it, right? So which is interesting, because it gives you the option to block it. So block services quickly allow you to block popular sites. For some reason, that's on and it didn't work. Looking at other things here. So settings, we have DNS settings. So it's using DNS 10, so using HTTPS, using quad 9s, which is a encrypted DNS. Hello request, fastest IP address. Hello request to speed up resolve while simultaneously querying all upstream servers, and then fastest query all DNS servers and return the fastest IP address among all responses. All right, so these are all. So we can enable DNS SEC here as well. Blocking mode is default. Default response to the next blocked. Okay. I think we're going to leave that for now. So then you can disallow domains, right? So it would actually just drop the query. It doesn't even, it's not a blocked domain, but it disables the query for it. I'm curious why it shouldn't be able to get to Amazon. Makes me mad. What good is a filter if it doesn't filter?
Do you have two DNSs or just one?
Just one, like that's, yeah. So if we go back to.
Okay, that's all you have in that computer.
Yeah, so this computer, that's why I went back and double checked it to begin with, right? So if I do an IP config, oops. So I have this Intel selected and I only have my DNS server there. I don't have any other routes out. Oh yeah, do that too. That. Trying to figure out how much of this I can. Oh, I can get to the season. We're done with that one. Close that one. Close that one. I only have like 15 versions of this browser open right now. It just keeps on going. Just close them all. Oh my gosh. Let's bring up Chrome. It's interesting that it was, my settings got changed. It usually clears, I usually have it clear all my stuff when I leave, and it's not set that way any longer. All right, so I'm just, I'm flushing the cache on this browser, and then hopefully it'll finish at some point. And of course, Google, we're not going to sign you out of your Google account while we do this. Everything else will sign you out of. Oh, all right, let's, come on, get done, computer. Oh my gosh. Sorry. We're just waiting for this to be finished, and we're going to see if it still, okay, so there we go. All right. Close that, restart everything. So that's better, right? So Amazon.com, I can't get there anymore. I can still get to school. And this is Slashdot. And it looks like all the ads are gone. So I think it's just because I had 50 browsers open already when we started this whole process. Yeah, so that's pretty good. No ads there, that's really nice. Usually Pi My Life Up has ads, and since I've refreshed my browser, right, so I don't see the ads on here. I have a subscription because I like what he's doing, so I just pay the $20 a year to block ads, but I'm not logged in, so the ads would normally be here, and they're all being blocked, and it's nice and clean, so it works once you clear your cache and restart your browser. So I like that. What do you guys think of that? Right, so 375 things blocked by filter. I do need to get access to Amazon though, so I gotta go put that back on. Yeah, so again, I mean, this example, probably not a good example for a K through 12 classroom. I was trying to find a project where we could show, because this is DNS, right? And we can look through filtering, and we talk about filtering. right? And do something like that. You could also, I think, for filtering now, I don't know how we would, I'm trying to think if there's a way to like create a network, you know, with a switch and cables and stuff like that, and how do we, you know, how would you go through and do something like this in that environment? Like I think like a VPN connection where we can, you know, ping to machines past a certain point, like that can be done, you know, constructed to the network that's on your desktop and not really connected to the internet. Yeah, I think, well, I don't know. I'm working through in my mind how in an environment where you can't plug in the raspberries, or where it's hard to plug the raspberries into a network that'll get you to the internet. I think that becomes an issue, because, well, it becomes an issue if you're doing these kinds of things, right? So if you're doing IoT in your programming, you know, lights and things like that, where we're really not overly concerned about, you know, the connected to the internet or installing software and things like that. I think that piece pretty straightforward, right? We can do that pretty much anywhere. I think the problem exists, excuse me, when you get into trying to teach networking fundamentals, server fundamentals, things like that, that you run into, you're going to run into these kind of issues that you guys are having, like where the network is configured the way it is. You know, I know in my classrooms, we have Sandbox, and I actually run this class in a lab where we have ports available for the Raspberry, so we can plug and unplug Raspberries as we go. I'm not sitting in a computer lab classroom type of computer classroom setup. I have workbenches around the outside of the room. There's PCs and Ethernet connections available for the Raspberries to use. We can throw switches in. We can throw wireless access points in. We can do quite a bit of things like that. But we're all contained in a sandbox, right? And the sandbox has a single connection out to the internet. So we can still connect to the internet, but we're not affecting any other classroom. We're not, you know, on a network with other computers and other services around us. So then now that gets me trying to think through how do we teach some of these topics in a more constricted environment, right? That's going to be the hard part. Like for me today, I'm on my home network and I'm an administrator on my machine, so I can install stuff. I don't have any blocks. Well, I have blocks now because I have AdGuard. I didn't have any blocks before, right? To block, you know, anything that I was doing to make this function. So so I'm trying to think through how would we do that? What kind of software could be done? What kind of setup could be done to make that happen?
I'm at the school, same
Mhm.
district as Sarah. And the only thing I didn't do was set the Raspberry Pi up as static, just figuring it's a one-time experience.
Yeah, and I think that's,
I'll just have the kids uninstall it at the end. That'll be the end of the lab.
okay. Yeah, and that would probably work. As I just thought about this, like on my machine, like it's not going to lose the IP. I mean, in an environment where this is a permanent fixture, right? Where if this was going to be installed in an environment, you know, in a business environment, right? Then absolutely it needs to have a static IP address, right? But at home, where we're going to run this and then we're going to do some things and we're going to say, yay, we did it, we made it work, and then we're going to remove it from our network. The changing it to a static is just, I mean, it's a step that's not really necessary from that perspective. I know there are some services though that require, like, it has to be a statically set thing. It can't be a DHCP deal. This one is, I think this one in that environment is going to be fine. I think trying to get this, and then showing it like that's, I mean, it took us a while to get to the point where we could show like it's truly functioning the way it's supposed to function. And then obviously we haven't even dug into the rest of this. Like we haven't even, I mean, I've done a couple little things, but I really think like you could go through and have them, configure block lists and all kinds of other things. I don't even know, like, so understands basic ad block rules. So like maybe research like some of the block lists that are out there, right? Actually, it's not even it's only using AdGuard DNS filter, right? So I could actually click on add away and malware domain, right? We can check for updates. Lists are already up to date. And it did, once we refreshed, it got rid of all the extra stuff. So, and I think you can probably find other block lists and add those, right? I mean, the assignment doesn't have to end with, okay, it's installed, right? There's all kinds of other configuration that would get them into figuring out how to make this work, right? We can give them examples of things to block and things that they can test, and settings to change and explain the setting changes and that kind of stuff too. So this is actually, looks like you can actually set this up as a DHCP server as well if you really wanted to. Experimental. But if you have a room where you can't get the Raspberry connected to the internet, then that becomes an issue. I think at the community college level, I don't know. I mean, I think we run into those same kind of things. It depends on your network and your systems. But even in the connecting things course, we do a lot of updates and we pull software down and things like that. So you really need to have that capability. I know in our lab, we have the computers there, and if somebody brings a Raspberry Pi, they would have a video connection. They would just take over the monitor, keyboard, and mouse off of the regular computer, and they would use it, and the IP and the Ethernet, and they would just use the Raspberry Pi as their computer. We wouldn't connect to it from another computer to make that happen, but that required us to unplug the keyboard and the mouse and the Ethernet and plug into a different port on the monitor. So we normally just leave a dangling HDMI cable for the Raspberry Pi stuff. So if you have an environment where the Raspberry Pis are going to be used all the time, then maybe we figure out how that could work, with your computer department, how we could make something like that work. You could also, I mean, I have a box of keyboards and mice that were just left over from when the computer department got rid of other machines. We had them bring us a box of 30 computers or keyboards and mice so that we had those available. I'm just trying to think through like ideas that would help you, outfit the room. Like, so if they're going to be, if we're going to have those kind of restrictions, how can we allow us to have a Raspberry Pi connected to the network? And I think running, extra drops is probably cost prohibitive. So we need to steal the drop from the computer or borrow the drop. We're going to borrow the drop for a couple of minutes. Anyways, all right. So I think we're going to put that down, right? So I'm going to write down like more constrained environment, right? So that we can kind of think through how could we do things? How could we make things happen, right? Yeah, I mean, my next thought was maybe, working with the computer department, you get an access point for that classroom that, they can port that access point directly to the internet, and then you just connect all your Raspberries to the access point. And go from there. Like, and I think most monitors have, at least 2 connections. Maybe you just have a permanent second connection. So you just switch monitors. You switch on the monitor, right? You just Instead of having disconnect anything else and unplug things, you just have a cable there for that. That's another option. Something to think about. Are there any other questions? I have that written down as something to kind of think about and kind of work on. And then I know I saw several people that had gotten this to work, and I've gotten it to work, which is pretty neat. I want to leave it running on. I'm going to leave it running. I'm going to leave my computer connected to it. See how that functions the rest of the day at least, and maybe even the rest of the workshop, just to kind of get an idea. I want it running because I want to, find the services that are running to make this program work, and then we're going to use that this afternoon to monitor those services, right? So using that initial state lab this afternoon, we're going to do that. Okay. So, and we have so we're about 9 minutes early, so we'll give you a little bit extra time for lunch. Right, we're supposed to break here in 9 minutes. Kind of think through anything else. So we went through resources this morning. We did some troubleshooting this morning. We got AdGuard up and running on the Raspberry Pi that we installed yesterday. We are going to do the Nexus project. We're going to do it right on top of this Raspberry Pi, so that we're going to, we'll do both projects on this Raspberry Pi. And by the time we get done, we should have an AdGuard blocking system, fully functional, which we have now. And we have a dashboard that monitors whether or not these services are running or not, and whether or not the IP address is available or not, and then some alerting on that. So more of a system admin type of a project. Okay, those also require internet connectivity as well. So yeah, so if you've gotten this project done, then and this has internet activity or internet connectivity, you should be good on the next project as well. All right.
Hi, Gary. I'm trying to get access to the document, and it's asking me, that I need to get permission to be able to see that file.
Okay. And I wonder why. Oh, it did log me out of everything. It's awesome. Let me go to my Google Drive. Google Drive should be there. And then
maybe I have something wrong on my side,
So what email address do you want to use? Because I have, what address do I have for you? I don't. That's probably the problem. So yeah, if you, what email address do you want me to type in?
I will just put it in the chat.
Okay. All right, so putty got done, that's good. All right, so I just added you to the actual folder, so you should have access to the documents underneath the folder.
All right, thank you. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, no worries. Anybody else have that same problem? Hopefully it doesn't come over as Swedish or German or whatever other weird things we're having with that one. You're welcome to go and drop off and head to lunch. I'm gonna pause the recording over the lunch break, and then I do have a record right in the middle of my screen this time, so I won't miss it. I'm gonna stop the share.
All right, sound good.
And we will pause the recording, and see, I'm gonna stop.